Sometimes when things are too natural and easy for us, we can actually ignore the success pathway that is right there, right in front of us. And I heard an example of this the other day that just, it lit me up because I've watched this happen with my clients before, where they're so tunnel visioned on a particular business route that they're traveling, and it's like that product or service has to do well, and they're put all their energy into it. Yet there's something else right there, which is actually happening much more easily, gracefully. Maybe it's even being given to them, like almost like on a silver platter, and they're not realizing or seeing it in the moment. So in today's video, I'm talking about how important it is to actually kind of zoom out and go into the higher context of what is going on around us, and so that we can see those instances and we can shift ourselves and make basically cast a new trajectory very quickly, because something is already working for us and we may not be seeing it. So welcome to this video. My name is Jess G, and I have a book, by the way, called Cast a New Trajectory that I finished writing last year, just a couple of months ago. And you can get your free copy just by the link in the description box below. And it'll tell one of the stories that I'm about to share with you in greater detail. So let me first tell you about the interview I saw online, and this is by a woman who's created a billion-dollar empire. And back in the day, in her early days, she had a different retail business altogether. And she was running this business, and along with it, she was creating another small product. And she would just kind of have it on the counter when, people were coming up to pay by the register. And she would only make like a handful of these things, right? They were a craft. And she found that they would sell, right? They would just sell like right away, and they'd be gone. And because it wasn't her prime product, she just did it for fun. She enjoyed it, and she wasn't really giving it attention. And meanwhile, her business, the vision she had, that product, she really saw it like succeeding, and she could imagine it all. It was something that she really desired in the world, and she thought lots of other people would also love it. And it turned out that it really wasn't a trend. It wasn't something that was going to go as far as she envisioned. And so her business ended up failing at that time after a few years. And so she had to give up. And of course, very stressful to have to go through that. And then something interesting began to happen after a time. Now, I'm going to shorten the story. So obviously, whenever any of us go through some kind of failure like that can take some time before we're ready to move out of it and able to even look beyond that. But in this case, what happened was that as she was, dealing with all of that and looking at, what am I going to do next? What happened was her past customers would call in and ask her about that little product that she had been creating that would be available by the register, and so she just filled a few orders that way. It's like, oh, that's nice that so and so asked. I'll make something for them, and this went on for a while, and then suddenly the awareness came that people were naturally asking for it. There was something here that she didn't even have to try and sell. Like, it was already selling. And so she decided to make some more of these products, enough to then start taking to retail stores, well-known companies, and say, hey, would you like to display my product at your store and sell it? And, she got some orders and more, and, basically she'd created something that was desired by lots of people, that was popular. And she really she just decided to believe in herself. And she even commented, because of her first failure, she was very reluctant to be social about this. She didn't want it to be all over or tell everybody what she was doing, because she still had that kind of shadow of, oh, I failed, my last business didn't work out, and so I don't really want other people to perhaps project onto her those memories. And she kind of kept it quiet, but because it was so popular, it was just like everybody began talking about it, to the point where she finally claimed it, claimed her own success, claimed that this was something that was working, and then went on, like full on, to make this into a brand that, as I said, has become $1 billion business. So, we all kind of wish for those kind of moments when we have that brainstorm or that people start coming to us. But remember, they can't come to us if we're not actually creating, right? If we're not like somehow showing what we have, people are not going to be able to give us that kind of feedback by buying it, right? I remember, for example, when I started, I went from my consulting business to coaching one-to-one, and making like any transition, anytime I've started a new service, there's always been some fear around it initially, right? Because it feels like starting over, even though, I had all these years of experience already. And I would say at a higher level, that innately I knew that I could do this successfully, right? So there was some confidence, but the speaking about it, there was still some fear in that. And but I did what I tell people to do, is that just get going, start. You don't have to go publicize it to the whole world before you sell one thing. You can just mention it to whoever's in your vicinity initially, or who what it comes to you to do. And so in that case, I may tell the story in more detail later, but basically I told three people who I happened to be seeing that day, about what my plans were, or not my plans, what I'd already, started. And like I wanted to create like a website for it, a brochure for it, something that I could physically hand out. I had all these ideas of, what we do, what we think we need to do to market ourselves. And instead of like waiting for that, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to tell these three people. Now, these three people, there was no way I expected any of them to be interested in the service. I didn't think it was something that they'd be seeking, but it was like, I'm just going to practice that experience of speaking it out loud. And just saying it, and especially in this case when there's such a low risk, right? I'm not expecting them to buy. It doesn't matter if they buy, so I can just say it out loud and see how it feels to say it. And I remember I did that, and I actually felt quite vulnerable at the time. Like, I noticed that even my voice wasn't as confident as it can be. And so I was like, wow, like, I was like observing myself and going, wow, like, I guess this is kind of scarier than I thought, to put it out there in this way. And to my absolute shock, one of the people walked over to me and said, could I please have a talk with you? I'd love to hear more. And she ended up becoming my very first client. And it just blew my mind, like how important it is to really follow through and just take any action when you can. Like, you don't have to often think about things as deeply. This is not like going into a company making a big proposal. Sometimes all it takes is just one conversation or two sentences coming out of your mouth saying, by the way, I have this, I'm doing this. And then you never know where that can travel. Okay, so now the client that I worked, who came to me, and in her case, same, like, it was a story of where she had a particular business that she was wanting to grow. She had already taken it to 6 figures, and but things had happened in her personal life, and so suddenly that really dropped, and she wasn't able to give that business as much energy. So she was like, okay, I'm hiring you because I really need to get back into momentum, and I want to now go to my next goal because I know I can get the 6 figures, but that's just like kind of the start. And so that was the attitude. And what interestingly happened while we began working on some of that it was apparent that, first of all, lots of things had been going on in her life, which had taken a lot of energy. So no wonder. And so there was no reason for her to feel, shame or embarrassed about it. It was just, things happen sometimes. And now, we gently began to kind of guide her back, bring her attention back to that business so she could streamline a few things. But as we began doing this, it turned out that she had another income stream. And it was something that she was actually just like helping out with and trying to get out of, because it wasn't like her personal business, right? So, she had this thing, which many of us do. It's like we want to create our own thing. But she had this income stream, and it wasn't particularly huge when we first talked, but it was there, and it was providing some extra income. It also came with some other challenges of people that she had to work with, and so because of that, she was also for that reason trying to get out. But as we spoke and I began asking her more questions about this, I realized how much fun she was having with that income stream, outside of those occasional times she had to deal with certain people where it was challenging. And we talked about that, and I gave her some ideas on how to work with that so it wasn't going to drain her as much. So suddenly, she could work around those certain things by changing the way she was interacting with people or when she was interacting, and positioning it so maybe they were doing the things that were actually really better for them to do and for her as well. So with some of this kind of shifting and changing to make it work better, and then that, really bringing out where this joy and enthusiasm was. And I remember like once in that business during our time together, she worked with me for several months because there was lots of the different things she was tending to. There was something had changed in this circumstance. I can't remember exactly what it was, but some rule had changed, and suddenly that looked like it was going to make the business really difficult. But she just jumped in and she took charge and she sorted it all out, and she actually exceeded what was even expected. So as I was witnessing this, of course, like I'm on the outside, right? I don't have any connection with the business or the people or anything, so I can remain in this more kind of clear state about it. There's no resistance on my part about what she does or doesn't do. And so because of that, I could see the level of joy and enthusiasm she had. I could see how easily she tackled what could seem like terrible, difficulties and problems for somebody else, and she just handled them. And then the income stream that was coming as a result was almost like became a passive income stream, because she didn't have to work on it all day, every day. And so through this, as I began to kind of, point to this so she could see it more and more, her enthusiasm rose, because suddenly the restrictions that she was placing on herself, like, oh, like I shouldn't do this, it's not my business idea originally, blah, 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 like all the things she had in the way, she was able to kind of just drop them and go into, wow, it is fun. I love doing this part. And if it's going to bring me like, a certain passive income every month, why not? Like if I can make this work better for me. And that's exactly what she did. Meanwhile, the business idea that she was putting a lot of energy into, the whole, the industry changed dramatically in the next year. And so suddenly the kind of things that would have just worked before, now we're going to take so much more energy. And it's not that she couldn't do it, but to have to do it from a mindset of, oh, I have to make this happen, is way more stressful than, hey, yeah, okay, I'm going to change a few things, but meanwhile, I've got this other business that is succeeding, right? And I'm going to make the best of that. And so that's how we kind of shifted her position altogether, so that this other business where she actually, by the way, returned to six figures as a result of this business when we were working together. And that, like, it just created a sense of ease suddenly in her life, that she could now go back to that business that she did want to grow hire somebody to work on a few things to streamline it, to make it a bit easier, and also look at what kind of team she now needed for the new level she wanted. And so a lot changed because initially, if we hadn't worked together, she wasn't seeing that piece, and she was just pouring a lot of her energy and resources and efforts into making something work that wasn't as natural for her and as fun actually for her as this other business was. So those are a couple of different stories that, our mind can tell us certain things where we're going this way, or that this is difficult, or these people are definitely not my customers, so why should I even talk to them about it? And when we are able to break out of these assumptions that we're holding on to, or beliefs or insistences, that's when we can actually find our breakthroughs. So I hope that's been informative for you. Maybe there's somewhere right now in your business or vision that, is feeling like it's hitting a lot of roadblocks, and maybe there's something else that actually is much smoother, or when it is time for a pivot, and sometimes those things are right in front of us. So I encourage you to kind of look at that, and if you need support, then click on the link below, and we can work together, and I can support you in seeing like how do I create something that actually works for me, instead of I'm working it all the time, right? Because that takes a lot of energy and effort. So have a great week, and I'd love to hear any comments about what particular things you got out of this video today, and like and subscribe and all that great stuff, so that this can grow. And also, as more people come in, as more comments come in, then I can also begin offering things that are maybe much more positioned to the kind of questions that will come up. And I already have some ideas on some programs that I'd like to offer the community, that I think would be really supportive, to take people, beyond the levels that they think they're stuck at, and say, hey, I've got way more probably accessible than I realized, and that I am going to make it work.